Hare Krishna. Welcome to another evening in the lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. I'm your host, Narottama Dasa. So we have a interesting evening ahead of us already, or behind us already. For those of you that have been in the chat room, we have been experiencing snafus this evening. Situation normal, all fouled up. It's an old army phrase. I see a few of you picked it up there. I was going to do all the tech stuff tonight, and I accidentally moved something and shut everything down and had to call a guy who lives right next door and rushed right over and put us back into shape. So we should be back up and live from what everybody's saying. I'm assuming we have video and picture all set in, and if that's the case, then we're going to go ahead and begin with tonight's program. Thanks once again, Abai, always bailing me out.
Just so you know, this is the webcam today.
That's the webcam,
Yeah.
so I'm looking here, not here.
Yeah, this is where it's
Got it.
broadcasting.
Okay. All right, good. So I'll try to keep that in mind. Okay, so some food for thought this evening. We often talk about the Goswamis of Vrindavan. The Goswamis, of course, this refers to not just the 6 prominent Goswamis, Rup, Sanatan, Jiva, Gopal Bhatta, Raghunath Das, and Raghunath Bhatta.
Listen for
Now,
that.
but this refers to all of the Goswamis, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Lokanath Goswami, Bhugarva Goswami. The lifestyle that they lived was one of great renunciation. But with that renunciation was necessary to have a high level of tolerance, a high level of patience, we might say. This was a part of their daily life. You can imagine if your circumstances are completely left to the mercy of Krishna, as we would say, but without any prearranged organization as we have in our own daily lives, at least to our perception of normal reality, then things may take a changing course very easily. Circumstances may enter in that cause it to change the direction of what you had planned, and this requires to be very tolerant and patient. So the Goswamis, of course, this was very easy for them, because what was their life? Constant hearing and chanting. So if they were supposed to go to Govardhan and meet there and do hearing and chanting, and some circumstance came up and they could not make it to Govardhan, so they simply continued their hearing and chanting in Vrindavan, or Radhakund, or wherever they were. In this way, they very easily adapted to the different situations because of their high level of Krishna consciousness. So why do I bring this up? I have a friend that works with computers, and he has a sign in his office, and it says, anybody can make a mistake, but if you really want to follow things up, you need a computer. So in preparing for this evening's class, as usual, I've, over the course of times, scanned and collected a variety of notes and articles and a large resource of information on the different personalities that I speak about in these Monday night programs. And then what I'll do is I'll collect all of that together in open document form on my computer, and then extract from all of that into a new document the notes that I will use for that broadcast presentation. So this means at any time having, I don't know, anywhere from 5 to sometimes as many as 12 windows open at one time and trying to manipulate them around. And I just got a small computer. I don't have one of those big screens and, 3 computers together like you see on these big tech guys, desks and all. So in the course of doing that tonight, I spent about an hour putting all my notes together for this evening's presentation, and accidentally clicked one button. One little button. One little mishap. And I erased the entire collection of what I spent the last 45 minutes putting together. So I had an option at that point to do 2 things. I could pick the computer up and throw it out the window, which would have maybe satisfied my frustration, but would have cost me dearly. But at the same time, it wouldn't have resolved the issue. Or I could have simply depended upon Krishna to give me some tolerance for a situation beyond my control. Now, in the last few days in Srimad Bhagavatam class here in New Ramanreti, Alachua, there's been some discussion about winding up the Gajendra Leela and moving into the next section of the Bhagavatam. And a running theme has been how we don't really have control over our environment. We like to think that we do. We like to think that we're the master of our life and that we make out our own destiny and so on and so on. But in reality, we have very little control. So this tolerance that we see in the lives of the Goswamis, this mood of patience, is an essential thing for becoming Krishna conscious. It's an essential thing for being peaceful, period. What to speak of trying to be Krishna conscious, because we understand that these things are under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that as much as we place ourselves under His control, and as much as we place ourselves, as much as we keep ourselves remembering Him, then this patience and tolerance will manifest itself within our character. So this brings us to the current point in tonight's show, where we're about 15 minutes late starting because I moved something on a computer and it disconnected the entire program, or because I pushed a button on the computer at home and lost all my notes. And this, of course, did not leave enough time to reconstruct everything and still be here on time. So patience and tolerance, and being able to think quickly on our feet. What are we going to do instead? So tonight, instead of what we were going to speak about, I'm going to keep that as a secret, and we'll talk about that next week. But tonight we're going to continue some of our periodic readings from the wonderful book In Progress, A Life of Devotion, the story of Narottama Das Thakur, by Mother Sitala. We've read from this 3 or 4 times, actually 2 or 3 times, and have just really appreciated. Everyone in the chat room has liked it very much. Manjesh, this is a novel of sorts. The question has been raised in our chat room if this is a novel. It is a fictional work of history in novel form based upon factual Shastric pastimes. So a devotee has the ability to write in this way, and has taken the pastimes of Narottama Das Thakur and presented them in a way that broadens the picture so that we can appreciate many more of the details. This is one of the situations we find with any historical work, is that first-hand presence is not usually there. Just like if I experience something and then I go and tell a friend, that first-hand experience is there, all the little details that make up the complete picture. So when we read different types of Shastra, sometimes there's a bit of a distance in getting that one-on-one. So one of the nice things about Mother Sitala's book is she fills in a lot of the pictures with very colorful descriptions. And as the response in the chat room shows, you've all enjoyed it very much in the past. So our effort this evening will be to read about the pastimes of Narottama Das Thakur and Ramchandra Kaviraj converting the 2 Muslim boys. Now, we know that after Narottama had spent his time in Vrindavan and been sent by Jiva Goswami to go back to Kituri, after he arrived there, and Santosh arranged in conjunction with Narottama and Janavamata to perform the beautiful Gaur Purnima festival, which we referred to a few weeks ago. The Narottama stayed there for some time and established it as his preaching base. And during that time, he's actually developed a following. He's initiated disciples. He's developed a reputation as a very solid, pure-hearted, and wonderful devotee. And his mission has grown considerably. His disciples, his activities, his preaching, his reputation, they've all grown in a very wonderful way, much to the pleasure of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for whom this was his actual desire. This was Mahaprabhu's desire. Remember, when he first indicated the beginning by calling the name Narottam, Narottam, Narottam out to Lord Nityananda, he explained, I want someone that will carry on the message after you and I have departed. So the fact that this is going on very nicely is great satisfaction to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we're going to pick up the story where Narottam and Ramchandra Kaviraj are walking. They're walking from the town down to the Padmavati River. Excuse me. One day, as Narottam and Ramachandra walked down the shady path to the Padmavati to take their baths, Ramchandra noticed two young Brahmana boys. They were walking alongside a herd of goats, sheep, and buffaloes. Look at those handsome-looking boys, Ramchandra said softly to Narottam. They must be taking those helpless animals to be sacrificed to Goddess Durga. What a shame that such bright boys are wasting their lives worshipping Devi. Narottam gave a solemn nod. Then an idea came to him. With a thoughtful smile, he said to Ramchandra, perhaps we can help them to get the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so they can become worshippers of Krishna. Then, quickening his pace, he said, let's catch up with him. As they approached the boys, Narottam slowed down and began talking to Ramchandra in a loud voice easily heard by the two boys. How can people be so foolish as to waste their time worshipping the demigods? The Supreme Lord Krishna clearly explains Yanti Deva Vrata Devan. Such worship is for the less intelligent. People who have no understanding of the goal of spiritual life worship the demigods in hopes of receiving some material gain in exchange for their worship. While it is true that they may achieve some punya, temporary reward by such worship, they will never stop the cycle of birth and death, nor will they taste the eternal nectar of pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Understanding Narottam's intention, Ramchandra Kaviraj shook his head sadly and replied in an equally loud voice, yes, it is very unfortunate. And to make things worse, many demigod worshippers become entangled in animal sacrifice. The deluding power of Maya is so strong that such people actually believe they are performing meritorious religious acts by offering the bloody flesh of poor, innocent animals to the demigods. But instead of receiving piety, they accumulate heaps of sinful reaction. As a result, they have to suffer life after life. The two boys slowed down their pace, gradually falling alongside Narottam and Ramchandra. They were obviously intrigued with the discussion they had been overhearing, for they were listening intently. Narottam continued, did you know, Ramchandra, that some people even think animal sacrifice is commendable? You're kidding, Ramchandra said with an exaggerated surprise. Yes, Narottam said, just because it appears to be condoned in some portions of the Vedas. But the animal sacrifices performed in Vedic times weren't done for the purpose of killing animals. They were meant to test the efficiency of the Vedic mantras. When the sacrifice was properly conducted, an old animal would emerge from the fire in a new, youthful body. Narottam stopped walking and said firmly, but this is not possible in this age. Well, why not? Ramchandra asked. Resuming his walking, Narottam continued. For a start, there are no qualified brahmanas to conduct such yagnas. Moreover, if there is even the tiny discrepancy in the execution of sacrifice or the pronunciation of a mantra, the person performing the sacrifice will be held responsible for the death of that animal. Narottam paused and then added, it is just like a murderer is responsible for killing another man. I'm sure that any intelligent man can understand this type of sacrifice can't be successful in this age, Ramchandra said. Everyone knows that the recommended process of sacrifice in Kali Yuga is the Sankirtan Yagna, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. This is the greatest of all mantras and is especially intended for this degraded age. To perform this sacrifice, we need only chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By performing this yagna, the results will be Cheto Darpanam Marjanam. The mirror of the mind will be cleansed. When the mirror of the mind is cleansed, one is automatically liberated. Only then can he go back to home, back to Godhead. Narottam nodded. That is why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalu nashteva 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 gatir hanyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, there is no alternative. There is no alternative. There is no alternative to chanting the holy name. When Narottam and Ramchandra reached the bank of the Padma River, they sat down and continued talking. The two boys stood nearby listening to them. As the truth of the sadhu's words began to dawn on them, the color drained from their faces, and they appeared like two beautiful blossoms that had wilted in the sun. One of the boys whispered to the other, what they say is definitely true. We've been committing horrible acts by sacrificing animals to Devi. I will never do this again. No, me either, the other replied. Those two Vaishnavas have completely changed my way of thinking. Who are they? They are so attractive. The way they speak, the way they move, the way they shine like two suns in the sky. Everything about them is otherworldly. My heart is drawn to them like a magnet. His friend ventured, do you think they would be the famous saints, Sri Thakur Mahasaya and Ramchandra Kaviraj, that the people here have been talking about? They organized a huge festival here in Kituri not long ago. If so, answered the other boy, it is our great fortune to meet them here today. We must take shelter of them in order to be forgiven for all the sins we have committed. With guilt-ridden faces, the two boys timidly stepped forward and fell at the feet of Narottam and Ramchandra. Sitting up, both boys pleaded with folded hands. Please save us, one boy said. Our mission has been sinful, but you have given us a new vision. Please deliver us, the other one begged. Otherwise we're doomed. Immensely touched by their humility, Narottam lifted the boys to their feet. Who are you? Where are you from? He gently asked them. I am Hari Rama, and this is my younger brother, Ram Krishna. We are from Ganeshpur, and our father is Shivananda Acharya. He is a devout worshipper of Devi. He sent us here to buy these animals for the Durga Puja. These animals are very expensive, Ramchandra Kaviraj noted. Yes, the boy confirmed. My father spends lavishly on worshipping Devi because he wants to get into heaven. Ah, yes, Narottama said. I think I have heard of your father. And do you think he is right in what he is doing? Oh, no, the boys protested. Now we know what a terrible mistake he is making. Smiling, Ramchandra invited, "Why don't you boys come along with us? We'll show you Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's temple." The boys readily agreed. Harinam then set all of the animals free to wander on their own. Together with Narottama and Ramchandra, the brothers then took their bath in the Padmavati river. After taking darshan of the deities in the temple of Sri Chaitanya, now you'll remember, I'll just interject here, the temple of Sri Chaitanya, this was the first of the 6 deities installed at the Katuri festival, was Sri Chaitanya. After taking darshan of the deities in the temple of Sri Chaitanya, the boys sat with Narottama and Ramchandra listening to the teachings about the science of Krishna consciousness. Excuse me. The boys sat mesmerized, eagerly drinking in each word. At the end of the day, Hariram grabbed hold of Narottama's feet and begged, "Please let us stay here with you. We have no desire to return home now." "It is better that you go back home," Narottama said, testing their conviction. "Your wealthy father is a Brahmana of great influence in this area. He will not approve of you staying here. Neither will his friends. Have you considered this before making your request? If we get your mercy, we don't need anything from our father or from society," Ramakrishna said. "Please let us stay here with you." With a smile, Narottama relented, allowing the boys to stay in his ashram. After 10 short days of associating with the 2 sadhus, Hariram and his brother became transformed into effulgent devotees. They fully embraced the philosophy and practices of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Ramakrishna took initiation from Narottama, and Harinam accepted initiation from Ramchandra Kaviraj. News of their conversion quickly spread to their father in Ganeshpur. He sent a messenger to the temple to insist that the boys immediately return home. Humbly submitting to the command, Narottama advised Narottama advised Hariram and Ramakrishna that they should return to their father's home. The following day, the 2 brothers fearlessly entered the mansion of their wealthy father. They offered their respects at his feet and then stood before him with folded palms. Shivananda eyed their shaved heads, tulsi beads on their necks, and the tilak on their foreheads. His face registered shock and disdain. Glaring at them, he rebuked them, saying, "Do you realize just how worried we have been? Your mother and I feared the worst. How could you do this to us?" Then, changing his voice to a more menacing one, he said, "And what have you done with all the money I gave you for Devi's puja? Have you donated it to your friends, the Vaishnavas?" Shivananda practically spit when he said that last word. Ramakrishna began to say, "It's not like that at all." But his brother motioned for him to be silent. Then, clearly unruffled by his father's demeanor, Harirama calmly explained, "We were on our way home with the sacrificial animals when we met Thakur Mahasaya and Ramchandra Kaviraj. We were so impressed by their knowledge and devotion that not only did we set all of the animals free, but we took diksha from them." "You did what?" Shivananda shouted, his eyes growing red with anger. "You little fool! How could you be so stupid to take initiation from a Sudra?" These Vaishnavas are not Sudras, Hari Rama said. They are great saints. Hari Krishna nodded. Ramakrishna nodded. Who are you to judge that? Shivananda shouted. I know who Thakur Mahasaya is, the son of that Kayasta, Krishnananda Dutt. Kayastas are low class, merely paid servants of the Muslim rulers. Kayastas are nothing compared to our superior Brahmin caste. Unable to listen to this diatribe, Ramakrishna interjected. His father used to rule all of Kituri. Ha! Scoffed Shivananda. Common people may be impressed by such administrators. They may even consider them royalty. But know that a paid servant is a Sudra and nothing more. It is bad enough that he was considered a prince. Now he's posing as a Brahmana. What arrogance! How dare he give you boys diksha? Please, do not speak like this, Father, Ramakrishna protested. Such offenses will... Don't you understand? Shivananda said. You are Brahmin boys. You belong to the highest caste, superior to everyone else. You cannot possibly take shelter of someone who is inferior by birth. Then, turning to Hari Rama, he said, not only have you ruined your own caste reputation, but you have allowed your younger brother to do the same. How can you live with such people and eat their food? Shivananda stepped back from his sons in disgust. Stay clear of me, or I shall also be contaminated by your presence. No proper Brahmana will allow you to join their company. You are social outcasts now. You must renounce this false diksha, and then perhaps consider whether you can be purified by some form of prayaschitta. Father, you do not understand, Hari Rama said firmly, interrupting his father's ranting. He was surprised that his father did not cut him off this time, and so he went on to explain how Thakur Mahasaya and Ramchandra Kaviraj are not ordinary men. They are very exalted manifestations of the Lord's mercy in this world. Everyone loves them for their great and good qualities. You should see them, Father. Their faces are radiant with goodness and spiritual light. Everyone praises their wisdom and humility. No one has ever heard a harsh word come from their lips. Why do you find cause to dislike them? Shivananda's eyes blazed again with scornful anger. They may be sadhus, but who has given them the right to initiate? That is the birthright of the Brahmins only, no one else. But Father, Hari Ram objected, if one is in full knowledge of the science of God, then he is a qualified spiritual master, regardless of whether he was where he has been born. It doesn't matter if he is a Brahmana or a Sudra, or if he is rich or poor. Shivananda shook his head violently. There are plenty of Brahmanas who are qualified gurus. You had no need to go to these low-class persons. Don't you see anything but a person's social status? Ramakrishna asked, exasperated with his father. The qualities a man manifests are far more important than his birth. If someone is born in a Sudra family, but is endowed with Brahminical qualities, he should be accepted as a Brahmana. And if one is born as a Brahmana family, but is endowed with the qualities of a Sudra, he should be accepted as a Sudra. What nonsense talk! Don't juggle words with me, Shivananda yelled. It is extremely clear. A Brahmana is a Brahmana, and a Sudra is a Sudra. Anyway, Vaishnavas like Thakur Mahasaya and Ramchandra are completely Anyway, Vaishnavas like Thakur Mahasaya and Ramchandra are completely above all these bodily designations, Hari Ram said, irritated by his father's stubborn insistence. Such great souls are fully engaged in the loving service of the Lord. That makes them superior to everyone. In the eyes of God, it is love and devotion that counts. It doesn't matter whether one is high class, middle class, or low class. The path of bhakti is open to everyone. Anyone who lives with his actions, mind, and words used only for the transcendental loving service of the Lord is certainly a liberated soul, even though he may appear to be in a conditioned material existence. Ha! More word jugglery, Shivananda said. Not only have you become contaminated by such low association, they have filled your head with this nonsense. You had no right to accept Vaishnava Diksha. You belong to a family of Shaktas. We have worshipped Devi generation after generation. All of our wealth, all of our success is due to her mercy. In a more quiet tone, he then said, offending her, you have spoiled your lives. Actually, Hari Rama said, your Devi is a Vaishnavi. She is a maidservant of Vishnu. That proves that Vaishnavism is the ultimate religion of every living entity. That is enough, Shivananda roared. I don't need to be preached to by my own sons. If you refuse to listen to me, I will bring you before a council of pundits. They will convince you to give up this bogus initiation. So let the pundits come, said Hari Ram boldly. If they can defeat us through Shastra, then we will give up Vaishnavism and perform whatever purificatory penance they recommend. With the determination made to reform his sons, Shivananda invited many brahmanas from across the region to participate in the debate. With clean-shaven heads and bold tilak marking their bodies, Hari Rama and Ram Krishna sat like proud lions before the council of learned pundits. Bright-faced and alert, they fingered their beads, chanting softly as they waited for the council to begin. The eldest Brahmana spoke up sternly, staring at them gravely. Your father is very concerned about you. He tells us that you have become confused due to bad association. So we have come here to help you sort out your spiritual dilemma. Then in a softer, more friendly tone, he said, You have always been good boys. Moreover, you come from a very good family. I'm certain that everything will become clear to you once this venerable council of pundits has shown you the error of your ways. Both boys smiled sweetly. We are always eager to increase our understanding of spiritual topics, Hari Ram said. Good, good, the pundit said, smiling. Then I would like to explain a few things to you from the Shastras. Yes, please enlighten us, Ramakrishna said. The elderly pundit launched into a long-winded lecture determined to set the boys straight. The council nodded their head in agreement as the pundit elaborately explained the foolishness of accepting initiation from lower caste persons. He particularly dwelt on the poisonous effects of bad association and reminded the boys of their duties as brahmanas. He stressed their duty to follow the family traditions. Then in great detail, he explained the importance of observing the Panchopashana system of worshipping the 5 demigods, Vishnu, Shiva, Ganesh, Surya, and Devi, in order to attain oneness with Brahman. When his speech was finished, each of the other pundits in turn expressed similar views, encouraging the boys to rectify their mistakes by rejecting Thakur Mahasaya and Ramchandra Kaviraj as their gurus. All the while Shivananda listened to the erudite lectures of the pundits with a smug smile on his face. It was obvious he felt his delinquent boys were now on the road to reform. The boys listened patiently as each of the pundits offered their advice. When everyone had finished speaking, Hari Rama humbly offered his pranams to the pundits, thanking them for their well-meant counsel. We are grateful for your concern for our well-being. Yet, we beg to differ with you on some points. Although we are just young boys and surely should not speak in such a way to our superiors, we request that you allow us to present some points for your consideration. Well, of course, my son, one of them said. Speak your mind, speak your mind. Hari Rama began to speak slowly and sweetly, point by point. He methodically explained the meaning of Vedanta, the different levels of realization of the absolute truth, the qualifications of a Brahmana, the qualifications of a spiritual master, the superiority of the devotional path, the ultimate goal of spiritual life, and the process of devotional service. From time to time, Ram Krishna interjected his comments in order to further elucidate various points. The boys spoke for hours, profusely quoting authoritative shastras to back up each of their statements. The pundits sat speechless. Shivananda appeared stunned by his own turn of events. His brow furrowed, and his feelings seemed to be wavering between awe and resentment. Hari Rama concluded his speech saying, because a Vaishnava devotee has understood the essence of Dharma and is thus fully engaged in the loving service of the Supreme Lord, his position is considered most exalted. He is a liberated soul and is transcendental even to the position of Brahmana. Therefore, we concede that there is no fault in our taking initiation from a devotee of Lord Krishna like Thakur Mahasaya. On the contrary, by rendering service to such a Vaishnava, everyone will be benefited. The demigods will be pleased, and our family members will also share in our purification. No one countered Hari Rama's arguments. All the pundits stared at the boys in utter amazement. The expressions on their faces indicated that while some of them were completely charmed by the boys, others were simply bewildered. Others, yet, were still indignant and angry. How do they know all these things? One of them muttered. The pundit beside him said, the Vaishnavas no doubt have great power. The eldest pundit turned to Shivananda, who was flustered and embarrassed as he apologized. These boys have attained the blessings of the two great Vaishnavas, Narottama Thakur and Ramchandra Kaviraj. No one can defeat them. The humiliated pundits excused themselves and filed out of the house, their shoulders hunched and their eyes downcast. Shivananda silently sat, staring at the ground, obviously quite confused. News of the pundits' defeat at the hands of the wealthy and cultured sons of Shivananda spread rapidly. As a result, many people were drawn to the shelter of Thakur Mahasaya, while others became antagonistic towards him. Some of the Brahmana community began spreading false rumors about Thakur Mahasaya. Some of them even secretly spied on him in hopes of finding some fault with his character. Others, though upset, remained silent, fearing the wrath of the Vaishnavas. So very important points made in this chapter here. And as we've been reading, I've been watching in the chat room, and some comments that I would like to share with those of you that are listening but may not be linked into the chat room. Manjesh was making the point that it's really, Mauricio was making the point that it's really quite amazing that with only 10 days of instructions, these boys learned this information and kept it within them. They were able to recall it, that they actually, by the process of hearing from Ramchandra Kaviraj and Thakur Mahasaya for only 10 days, their hearts were changed and they were able to remember the instructions that they received. Now, Radha Prema Bhakti Devi Dasi has mentioned that the long-winded speeches reminds her of some of the things she's heard from her Karmi friends, her non-Vaishnava friends. This issue of, I'd like to take a second here because it's brought up in the chat room about bad association. Krishna's in everyone's heart mentions being made, and that we're all karmis, stuck in the karmic system, so to speak. But that as Vaishnavas, we should share our association freely. Kartika Devi Dasi has mentioned this, that the purpose of a Vaishnava, just as we see in the character of Ramchandra Kaviraj and Thakur Mahasaya, Narottama, is that they give their association to others. And then by giving that association, others can be benefited. The opportunity of doing this gives us facility to be able to preach and spread the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, I would like to put the idea out there for some input from the chat room that, not always do we find ourselves in a situation where we are able to preach, at least not directly. Many of us in the listening audience, myself included, have different types of jobs that we have to maintain to take care of our responsibilities as family men, as grihastas. So this is an interesting point because we are required to have association with persons in the external world, but at the same time, according to the instructions of great devotees, we're supposed to give up this bad association. So I'd like to hear what those of you in the chat room have to say about this. How is it that we can, on one hand, perform our proper duties as grihastas to maintain our families by having some type of livelihood that will put us in the association of non-devotees, and yet on the other hand, we know that we should avoid the association of non-devotees. If anyone has any thoughts on this, it'd be good to hear them. While we're waiting for that input, I'd like to share one thought that Srila Prabhupada had on this subject, as that the difference is defined by whether we are giving our association or whether we are taking association. To take the association of those that we may be in the same work environment with, that are not of a Vaishnava background, or that may even have no interest, or may even, as some of these pundits here, be inimical to the interest of Vaishnava background, and not be impacted by it, is determined by the type of intimate dealings we have with them. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada has recommended that we keep our self in such a way that we maintain our devotional activities, and at the same time we give our association as we're able, but we don't intimately share. There are different types of relationships given by Rupa Goswami in the loving exchanges between devotees. To give prasadam and accept prasadam from a devotee, to listen to a devotee reveal their mind and to reveal our mind to others. These are some of these examples. Now, if we are able to avoid this intimate type of exchange of revealing our mind and taking the counsel and advice of persons on those issues dear and near to us spiritually, this is what will constitute saving us from that bad association. Many of you may find yourselves in a circumstance where you have a work environment and there's a joint lunchroom, so to speak. And as we all know, those persons that are not following the devotional path may eat many unmentionable foodstuffs. So to be able to avoid that circumstance, or at least to be able to maybe bring prasadam and in some way try to distribute some cookies or cupcakes or something like that that they can also taste. This is one way that sharing Krishna consciousness in a very neutral way can benefit those that have no interest in being benefited. Radha Prema Bhakti has mentioned here that if we're being good examples as devotees and good examples of Prabhupada movement, then people will be curious and ask questions. Actually, Prabhupada also desired that we should behave like ladies and gentlemen. This is a very important thing, that we should maintain the highest ethical and moral standards, and at the same time, we should be in a situation where people see something different in us. They respect something about us because we have these qualities of the Vaishnavas that we discuss each Monday evening together. Just going to catch up here with some of what's being said here. The general mood being shared in our chat room is that it is the example. Prabhupada said this example that we set is very, very important. We have a unique situation like that here in Alachua. The community that we live in is a small rural community. And there are so many devotees that everywhere you go you see devotees, and people at large, the secular society, recognize devotees. Recognize them by their appearance as Vaishnavas, by their appearance of just having a sika, or maybe being in straight clothes and then having neck beads and being seen in that way. So devotees are observed in this way, and therefore it's important how we behave and how we act and what type of an impression this gives. So these are the types of qualities, as I started off this evening's presentation, that we can look to the Goswamis of Vrindavan, we can look to these devotees that we discuss to develop those qualities and characters. We certainly may not be able to live the lifestyle of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, wearing only a kopin and sleeping under a different tree each night, and Raghunath Das Goswami eating only a handful of buttermilk every third day. And then if one of the persons bringing that buttermilk happens to bring it in a leaf from a place that is adverse to Radharani, throwing it and not eating for another 3 days. So we may not be able to do those things, but what we can do is develop the qualities that the Goswamis had in their habits, the qualities that they had in their personal lives, the example that it will allow us to set as we have to mix with what we've been discussing here these last few minutes is bad association. You know, struggling with those that are impacted by the fruitive activities and doing our best to keep ourselves protected from that. So these are some of the practical things that we can take from hearing each week about the lives of the Vaishnavacharyas, something that we can see how it will fit into our life in a very real and practical way. So with that, we see how these two boys were so wonderfully transformed. What to speak of those of us that get so much association with each other and so much association with senior devotees and so much opportunity to hear, who was it here, Manjesh was mentioning iPods and MP3 players. We can fill them with so much information, lectures of Radhanath Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada, and kirtans by B.B. Govinda Maharaj and Padahari Prabhu, and I'm just reading thinking what's in my MP3 player. But these are the ways that we can keep ourselves filled with this transcendental sound vibration, which will impact our consciousness and bring about transcendental thought vibration. So we're going to finish here for the evening. I see Devi, wherever she's at, it's 3 a.m. So we'll let her get some rest. And then we'll once again thank all the devotees that have joined us and that continue to join us each week as we finish another episode in the lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. Thank you very much. I'm your host, Narottama Das, and we'll speak with you again next Monday evening. Hare Krishna.